We have the session. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you once again for being here. My name is Nurulani Yazdani, and I work as the Education USA advisor at the Lahore office. We have the University of New Hampshire team with us who will talk about financing your US education. I will hand it over to them briefly, but just before I do that, I'd like to start by introducing Education USA and USEFP to those of you who knew or who are joining with us, joining the session the first time today.
Hi Nora, apologies, but can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Just shortly after I do this, I can hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you.
So, United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, we're a binational commission with the governments of Pakistan and the United States. We offer personalized guidance to students who wish to pursue their higher education in the US. Fulbright is our flagship scholarship, and it is going to open real soon. So, those of you, please do apply for that. In Pakistan, Education USA is housed within USAFP. We're a State Department, and whatever information I'm going to give you is from them, so it's accurate, current, and comprehensive. And as I said earlier, we provide students with resources in helping them finding their best fit according to their academic goals. Just to briefly go over the services we offer, we do a lot of virtual sessions, such as the one you're attending right now. We also have GRE workshops. Now that Fulbright season is coming up, we will be starting virtual and in-person workshops real soon. We have offices in the three big cities, Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. We also have a library for those of you who'd like to come in and study. All you have to do is drop us an email before you get there. Lastly, our most famous service happens to be one-on-one advising, where you register with us on our website and you assign an advisor who works with you throughout the entire application cycle, and all our services are free of charge. This is the email where you can reach out to us in case of any questions or concerns. And without further delay, I'll hand it over to Abrita and Sarah from University of New Hampshire. Over to you. Thank you for being here.
Hi,
Also, if
can
you
you
guys
all
have
see my
questions,
screen?
yes, your screen is visible.
Okay.
I just wanted to leave a quick FYI. Please leave your questions in the Q&A box, and they will get to it at the end of the session. Thank you.
Alrighty, I think we can begin now. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Nora, for having us. As Nora said, we will answer your questions in the end if you leave it in the chat session. So today we'll be covering a very important, pertinent topic. So it's finances. And if you really want to learn about what goes into financing your college education in detail, so we'll be giving you sort of the different types of funding in higher education. So please stay tuned. Um, Next slide, one second. All right, so my name is Abrita Kuthumi, and I am the undergraduate international admissions at the University of New Hampshire. Um, and then we also have my colleague Sarah, who's the graduate international admissions. And today we will be talking about, how can you finance your U.S. education? We'll be also going, telling you guys about the undergraduate and graduate level scholarships, assistantships, research grants, fellowships, as well as awards and other miscellaneous categories, as well as ending with sort of the work opportunity for international students, followed by a Q&A. So, how do you finance your study in the USA? It's important because that's how you can succeed. essentially. And that's why we're here to provide the information in a bit of a detail. So you'll be seeing a lot of the cost of college breakdown tables. Um, I know someone's raised their hand, but if you don't mind waiting till the end so we can get all the questions in, we just want to give you the information first. Um, so before you apply, these are sort of the some of the cost that like is applied universally, regardless of which university you apply to. So you have the testing requirements and credential evaluation that takes the earliest. That's because when you're taking the test, you might have to, retake it if you don't meet the minimum standards. Especially as an international student, we will likely be required some sort of English proficiency test. Popular options are the IELTS, which ranges about 54,000 PKR PKR to 94,000 PKR. We also have Duolingo, range is about 19,000 PKR. So these are all like we converted, as you can see, to the Pakistani rupees. The Pearson test of English, which is from 200 to 250, or that's 55,000, a little over, to 69,000 Pakistani rupees. We also have TOEFL IBT, which ranges from 200 200 to 250, so similar with PTE. We have the Oxford Test of English. This is more of an upcoming, not as commonly seen, but definitely more coming now. That is 144, which is around 39,000 PKR. These are estimates, by the way, and it also depends on the region that you'll be taking the test for. So I would just think of this as like as it says, like estimate. It's not the like hardcore sort of number. For undergraduate testing, depending upon whether the school you're applying to is test optional or not, you you might have to take the SAT or ACT, although I will say it's now more like optional than it used to be. So that would be about 111 to 135 US dollars, which is about a little over 30,000 PKR to 37 thousand PKR. And SAT, which is also less common, is 168 to 221, which is about 46 thousand PKR to 61,000 PKR. And as I mentioned again, like you want to take this like at least 6 months before, just in case you don't meet that minimum requirement and you need to retake it, which means like you need to study for the exam, and in order to have an improvement, I think it will take at least a couple of months. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I am here. My apologies. I can jump into the grad side of things. Hi, everyone. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Sarah Scott. I work at the University of New Hampshire with Abrita. So I work in the graduate school versus the undergraduate, and I work with incoming graduate students. So I may have even spoken with some of you by chance. So thank you for having me. But in terms of testing on the grad side, so the graduate side of things in terms of testing and many other areas is a little bit different than undergraduate, as it does vary widely by program. Different programs have different testing requirements. So some programs may require the GRE or the GMAT. The second bullet there, the Praxis or the Pearson Foundations for Reading, that is specifically for education programs. So unless you are thinking about an education program, you don't need to worry about that. GRE and GMAT is more focused on research programs, maybe a little bit STEM or math heavy. But it's very important to always check your program of interest webpage to see what those application requirements are and what those testing requirements are.
Yeah. Moving on, thank you, Sarah. The application fee will come next. So when you hit the apply button or when you submit the application, basically before officially submitting, you have to pay the application fee for it to be processed. And the price really depends on the university, but it can sort of range up to 100 US dollars, so about 28,000 Pakistani rupees. And there might be like cases where universities might give out like application fee waiver. For instance, if you're like a really like if you can show that you're really interested in the university and you have the academic credentials to get admitted to that university, or if they have like yeah, so university have their own sort of protocol for giving out application fee waivers. So I think it's a good practice to also like ask instead of asking, can I have one? You can ask like, what is the process of getting one? So that way you can be informed, what steps you need to take in order to get an application fee waiver from some universities. And the application deadline for undergraduate, some universities do rolling, but rolling admissions, some do not. And those who do not, typically their early action deadline is November, and then their regular decision is February 1st. Um, and for graduate, it's simply, as Sarah has mentioned before, it simply varies by the program.
Yes, and I would
So
say for graduate as well, just a quick thing, Abrita, for graduate, there are also all um, application fee waivers. So some universities and colleges do offer that, not all though, but it's a good practice, as Abrita said, to always ask. But instead of just asking, you want to make sure that you're showing that you are in fact a qualified student. So if you're reaching out and asking someone, be prepared, write a brief paragraph, maybe include your resume, your transcript. If you're reaching out to the program, maybe include those items as well. Sometimes if you attend information sessions, certain graduate schools will offer attendees application fee waivers. So do know that it's out there, but it is not offered by all.
yeah, thank you, Sarah, for clarifying that on the graduate frontier. Moving on, we are going to talk about so after you're admitted, the immigration costs. So this particular is like regardless of also any university that you go to, this is something that you will have to pay, and it's not necessarily as it says, it's the immigration cost, not necessarily to the university. So, so once you're successfully admitted to your, desired university, you'll have to request what is called like your I-20 form from the university's immigration office advisor. And that is because you need to have that in order to pay the CVIS I-901 fee to the Department of Homeland Security in the US. And this is mandatory and you paid once. So for F1 and M1 visas, which are the most common type, it is about 350 US dollars, or around a little over 98 thousand Pakistani rupees. Um and this is before your visa application interview. And so there's a second cost as well, which is that a visa application fee. This is paid to the US Embassy or consulate, and this is for the visa portion. So the visa interview. It is around 185 US dollars, or around 51 thousand Pakistani rupees, for F1, which is the most common type of student visas that we'll see. So this is right before when you need to schedule the interview. Um, yeah, at least a couple of days in advance. So these are an important step, but not towards the university, for the official immigration side. So after you are enrolled, you first need to pay the enrollment deposit. So this deposit basically reserves your seat at the university, and it's typically non-refundable. It ranges around like 100 to 500 US dollars, which is about 27,000 Pakistani rupees to 138. Um, so this is applied to your first year tuition. So it's not an additional cost. It's just like your just like how in a I guess when you're renting, you're paying like initial deposit that's counted towards your lease is like first month rent. It's similar to that. It's counted towards your year's tuition. And for the undergraduate student, the deadline for enrolling, so there's a National College Decision Day, and that is May 1st.
And for graduate, it does again vary by program, so it can vary widely as to when that enrollment deposit is due, and it does vary widely if it is required to pay an enrollment deposit. So, for example, at the University of New Hampshire, there's only a handful of graduate programs that do require it, but again, it's really varies by university and program.
Yeah. Moving on, we have tuition fees, which varies the most by university to university. And students who are international, as you all are, would be considered out of state. So if you're comparing the in-state and out-of-state tuition prices within like university portals, just make sure you're looking at the out-of-state. And according to the sort of US news, the average cost of tuition for international students per year is about 25,415, which is around 7 million Pakistani rupees. And then this bill typically comes over the summer, so the payment needs to be made prior to your start term. So if you're starting in fall, then that means like by like August.
And for graduate programs, again, the key word is varies. That's why it's very important to, do research on the universities that you're interested in and the programs that you're interested in. So between professional and research programs in the graduate school, costs can vary. And then between individual programs, costs can vary as well. Universities on their websites generally provide, a good amount of resources as to how to kind of prepare for what costs you would be required to pay. So, look through your program page, look through the financial page, and see if they provide you with any kind of breakdown of cost of tuition by program. But you can see here that these are kind of some estimates for a professional master's program can range anywhere between 50,000 to 65,000 US dollars. And then for research programs, it can, range anywhere from around $29,000. And that's for your total annual tuition per year.
Yes. Moving on to housing. So while you pay for your tuition, you can also pay for your housing together over the summer. And since international students are like you're out of state, you typically don't have like commuting. You're not commuting to colleges, so it's housing is a an important critical part of the cost equation. So depending upon universities, you can also be required to like stay on campus or or not. Um, so the average cost of a dorm is around for a public college is around $11,520, which is about 3 million Pakistani rupees. For private colleges, it's even a slightly higher. It's 13,028, which is yeah about 3.6 million Pakistani rupees. And as I mentioned, if you're living on campus, you can pay it with the tuition bill. It should be a portal that once you're admitted, you can have access to, where you can, you can you can see the bill and then pay it over the summer. Another necessity is, of course, food. And while you're living on campus, you're required to have a meal plan. So the meal plan average is about 570 US dollars per month. So about 158,000 Pakistani rupees. Um, and these, as I mentioned, the tuition fees, the housing, the food are necessity, and they can be paid through the university's student portal. Moving on to health insurance. So health insurance is required in the US. When you are an international student, you can get it through university or external providers. And this also really fluctuates, but the estimated cost is from $50 to $200. So from 14,000 to 56,000 Pakistani rupees. And this is also before you enroll in classes over the summer. And lastly, we have the books and miscellaneous items. And this is where you have the most flexibility to save, because you have options, especially for books, to either get a digital version, go to the library and borrow in advance, or get secondhanded like items, books from like Facebook Marketplace, or there might be like group chats within universities for selling secondhanded books and other items. So the range starts from 300 to 1,000. So it's from 84,000 to 280,000 Pakistani rupees, and this is as needed. As needed. So the next three slides are focused, catered towards the undergraduate information and cost. So the tuition, fee, and housing, food, they're all called what is called like the cost of attendance. So I meet a lot of students when I'm going in college fairs, and a lot of students ask me like, "Oh, what is the tuition? Can you tell me the tuition?" And while that is all very important, I think a more accurate picture would be to ask the cost of attendance breakdown, which will include the tuition, but also the other necessary costs. You also can see a difference between public versus private. And in this particular example, you see that the private, like university, costs more, but typically it's actually quite the opposite. So private colleges typically cost more, and they're more expensive because they're not like one funded by the government, but the perk of them is that they do offer like smaller size like classes, and then lower student to faculty ratio, which is good for building connections and network. But as you can see, there can be a substantial difference when it comes to public versus private. And right now we have, of course, the map of the United States. And as you can tell us by the different numbers, this is the average public four-year post-secondary out-of-state tuition and fees. And this is in thousands, as the caption mentions. Not only does it depend upon university, but also where you decide to study. The geography also makes a huge difference in terms of the tuition and prices. And based on the data that was provided from Education Data 2025, so Vermont, Michigan, Oregon are high in terms of the cost, tuition cost averaging. And then we have Florida, Wyoming, who are quite in the bottom. as you can see through these numbers.
And Abrita, if you could just go back to the slide with the map on it for just a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to note that while these numbers do reflect undergraduate estimates, it is still a good kind of representation of the cost of college, university, whether it be undergrad or grad by state. So just to note that yes, these are undergraduate numbers, but it still kind of gives you a good idea of what is the cost of higher education state by state across the U.S. You can go to the next one. So this slide here is the average cost of a master's degree today. So the average cost ranges between 44,000 and 71,000 US dollars, depending on the school, the major, the length of the program, the location of the school. As Abrita noted earlier, public institutions versus private institutions. So public are generally going to be less expensive because it is funded by the state. But each of them have perks. You have to weigh kind of what you're looking for in a university when you're making that decision. Are you solely looking at cost? Are you looking at class size? Are you looking at the resources that university has? I can speak just for example about the University of New Hampshire. It is a public institution. And it has around, in total, I think just over 13,000 students, undergrad and grad. But what's nice about the University of New Hampshire is it is public, but it is on the smaller side of a public institution. So it's a medium-sized university. So class sizes are smaller. So really important to ask those questions and do your research. But here you can see with the graph on the right, the average cost of a master's program by type. So just to give you an idea that it really does vary. Education coming in around 44,000 US dollars, research and science, so STEM programs around 61,000, professional programs around 62,000, and the arts are around 71,000. But again, this really can vary by university. So always good to, really ask those questions and dive into what that university you're interested in has to offer. So next we'll be going into types of funding. So we're going to dive like a little bit deeper into scholarships, assistantships, research grants, fellowships, and awards. So first up is scholarships here. And we'll talk about different types of scholarships. So these are some of the main types of scholarships. There are more that exist out there, but just to kind of give you a basis, a starting point. So there's merit-based scholarships, which are based on your GPA, your test scores, your experience, your transcript. So all of that is looked at, and that kind of determines how much you might receive for a scholarship. There is need-based scholarships. So that is based on your financial background and your needs. For undergraduate, it's based on your CSS profile. And for graduate, it depends if the institution does offer it or not. International country or region-based scholarships. So that is for international students from certain countries or regions of the world. Both of that depends on institutions, but some universities might offer scholarships specifically to students from specific areas. And then department or program specific scholarships. So that is specific by college, school, or academic program. Again, that does depend on the institution. But for example, with undergraduate, it can be more common to offer a university-wide, maybe like merit-based scholarship for undergraduate students versus on the graduate side, it may be more common for the scholarships to be offered on a program-specific basis, not at the kind of central graduate school level across all programs. So always important to ask, do your research, see if there's anything listed on the program page or on the university website, reach out to your program. And then the last one here is private or external scholarship. So that is a scholarship provided for students from an organization outside of the university. So it could be a nonprofit foundation, Rotary clubs, businesses or corporations, community organizations, any other group. And those are available on both the undergraduate and graduate side. And so these may or may not be listed on your university website. So it's, I always encourage students when I'm talking to them, graduate students, to go out there and do your research, see if there's any organizations within your community, your country that offer scholarships for students, and make sure that you are checking what that criteria might be. Is it for students looking to study abroad? Is it for students interested in a specific subject? And then also take to the internet, go to Google, search, get down and see if you can find anything out there. Sometimes that kind of that digging and does pay off. Rita, I don't know if you want to add anything on your end about scholarships.
Yes, so for undergraduate, universities can offer like merit-based scholarship, and it can be like either based on like your GPA or like your like standard exam scores, or like it can be a mix of things as well. So for example, Texas Tech has like a grid basically where students can, if you have a combination of a certain GPA and an SAT/ACT score, then you can get like varying scholarships based on that, where you fall in the grid. So that I know that for them it's like about 1,500 to 8,000 US dollars. I know that University of New Hampshire also does merit-based scholarship. It's solely based on your recalculated GPA, and that scholarship ranges up to 20,000. If you basically get 3.0 till 4 GPA and above, and that 20,000 is of course students who get 4.0 and above. We have the for need based, some universities might look for CSUS profile to review your financial aid application. So domestically, we have the what is called FAFSA to the federal government, but for international students a similar tool is called the CSS profile. But the CSS profile is much less commonly used within universities. So you want to make sure that if you are asking for financial scholarship, finance-based scholarship, then you do some research on your university. We have so the international country region basis more of a rare scholarship, and it can also really depend on the institution as it mentions, but alumni from certain countries might provide, or the admissions office sometimes. I have heard of a case, at least one case that has done that to basically have students welcome students from a certain country to incentivize students to come. And we also have the international country. So for University of New Hampshire, we have the International Engagement Service Scholarship. So it is basically for students who are high achieving but need financial aid. So it's kind of a mix of the three first components. So it's like based on your merits, your GPA, your need based, as well as you having the international status. So there are also international scholarships that you should definitely ask. Yeah, also, like I would say, when you're emailing admissions counselors, I think it's always better to frame, instead of "Can I have a scholarship?" is something like, "Can you tell me about the requirements and criterias for receiving scholarship?" I think that framing is always better. But I think those are sort of the updates that I have for undergraduates. Moving on.
And so next up, I'll talk about assistantships. So these really only apply at the graduate level, in most cases. If you want to switch to the next slide. So what is an assistantship? An assistantship is a paid academic job for graduate students where you work for the university. And there are typically three types of assistantships. Um, and so either you're providing instructional, research, or administrative support for the university. So there are teaching assistantships, and that's where you provide instructional support and typically is funded by the university. Research assistantships provide research support and is typically supported by external funds like grants or contracts that program or a specific faculty member might have received. Graduate assistantships provide administrative support and is typically supported by university funds. So those are the three main types of assistantships. So how does it work? Typically, tuition is paid and a stipend is received to help offset living expenses. That typically also includes health insurance and other benefits. Assistantships typically cover the academic year with renewal based on strong performance and funding availability. So if you receive an assistantship for your first year at a university in your graduate program, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will receive that assistantship a second year. Usually you don't have to reapply for it, but it is based off performance. It's based off how you're doing academically. So, it's important to do well and perform strong to kind of continue that funding through an assistantship. Positions are available across all programs, but STEM and research programs offer the highest number of assistantship opportunities. So there's full or partial coverage. And so full or partial coverage depends on the amount of work that you're doing. And it does vary by department. So typically you're getting a tuition waiver. Health insurance is covered. Stipends can range from 15 to 30,000 US dollars, and that's for working 20 hours per week. And that really can vary across programs and across universities. And so it's generally a combined value of tuition, stipend, benefits, so health insurance, and that typically falls in between a total of 30,000 to 55,000 US dollars per year. So how do you obtain an assistantship? You know what it is. You're familiar with kind of how it all works, but oftentimes the hardest part about it is how do you obtain an assistantship? And so I speak with a lot of graduate students who are looking for funding because assistantships are maybe one of the most common forms of funding in graduate school, especially at the University of New Hampshire. And so you want to research your university, the academic departments, and the faculty you are interested in. So, kind of in the simplest terms, how do you obtain an assistantship? You must ask. Do all of your homework, really look into that program, see if they have any information either on their program page or on the department page. See if you can click through different tabs. Sometimes departments will list out we offer X amount of assistantships per year, and here's how you have to go about getting it. Usually, you must reach out to your program. So it's always encouraged to, of course, read through the program as much as you can so that you can maybe answer some of those general questions. And then oftentimes for research-based programs, you have to reach out to specific faculty members. And so you want to reach out to faculty members that do research that interests you and aligns with what your interests are. And so you want to, when you're reaching out to these faculty members, you want to make sure that they are able to take on new students so that they have room in their schedule and that they have, enough funding that year. For professional programs, you want to reach out to, usually it's the program coordinator or recruitment coordinator And so it's less of kind of securing that faculty advisor as you may need to do in a research-based program, but you need to reach out to the coordinator of the program for professional programs to secure an assistantship. For both, ask what the process is and make sure to follow through and stay connected. So oftentimes, I hear students have sent out their emails. It's generally recommended you go to the faculty directory, identify 3 to 4 faculty members that align with your area of interest for research, and send them an email. You may not receive a response immediately. Faculty members are very busy, they get a lot of emails. And so don't be discouraged if you don't get a response. It is encouraged to follow up. Obviously be patient, give them a little bit of time, a couple of weeks, but send a polite follow-up email. In that initial email, when you're reaching out, you don't want to provide too much information, because if somebody sees a very long email, they might just be like, oh gosh, this is too much. So, write a little bit about yourself, include your transcript, include your resume, and be able to highlight those important parts of your experience and how your interests relate to that faculty member's interests. Go to LinkedIn, look them up on LinkedIn, see if there's anything highlighted there. If you're not receiving responses via email, maybe try LinkedIn. Let's say you reach out, you do 3 follow-up emails with these 3 to 4 initial faculty members that you reach out to, and you don't receive a response. Sometimes that is a response within itself. It may mean nothing against your experience and qualifications. It might just mean they don't have space in their schedule, or they don't have the funding this year. So go back to the drawing board. Find 3 to 4 more faculty members that might have some research that interests you and align with your interests and your experience, and reach out to them. So, this is the process. It's important to start early. Generally, you want to start, especially for research programs, you want to start reaching out to faculty before you submit your application. So, if you do have questions, reach out to the program. See if there's a program coordinator or an administrator that you can reach out to. But, before you do that, it's important to kind of find as many answers as you can on your own. So ask questions, reach out, be confident, follow through. And, this is kind of the process for assistantships.
So another another type of funding besides the assistantship would be the research grants. So what is a research grant? So a research grant is essentially funding that supports a specific research project. So the funding goes towards either like a research team, a faculty, or a department. And that, within that, students, it can be either graduate or undergraduate, can be hired to support through this research grant. So you're essentially collaborating on a research project. And the grant covers the cost of materials, the equipment, travel if you have to, as well as sometimes there being an additional stipend. And of course, grants differ from loans because, unlike loans, they do not need to be paid back. And this is support for research and academic pursuits.
So I'll talk a little bit about what is research. You can go to the next slide if you want. So what is research? What is an R1 status university? So you may have heard this term kind of swirling around. So an R1 university is a Carnegie classification that recognizes very high research activity and places it among the top research universities in the US. So this status reflects strong external funding, broad doctoral offerings in more than 20 fields, and nationally recognized research leadership. As an R1, an R1 institution delivers impactful research, advanced graduate education, and solutions to local and global changes. So to be classified as an R1 university, the university needs to spend at least 50 million US dollars annually on research and development, or R&D, and must award at least 70 research doctorates each year. So, for example, the University of New Hampshire is an R1 university. These kind of areas that you can see here on the bottom left of the slide. So these are some of the key research areas that universities may dive into. So space science and astrophysics, marine and ocean science, environmental sustainability, health and biomedical research, cybersecurity and data science. So there is a lot of different areas out there. And, an R1 university is really kind of, getting their hands into the community, working with organizations. So there is a lot of opportunity when you see that, that R1 status. And these are just some examples of research at the University of New Hampshire. So there's that website there actually. So if you visit that, there's a world of research out there, at every university. But the University of New Hampshire, for example, does a great job partnering with local businesses, organizations. So for just to name a few, really, there's the Carsey School of Public Policy. And there is the College of Health and Human Services. There's College of Engineering and Physical Sciences. And then there's the Peter T. Paul College of Business and Economics. So all of these different colleges under the University of New Hampshire do a lot of different research within the community. And there's so many opportunities for students to get involved. And next up, I will talk about fellowships. So fellowships are available nationally and internationally. There are hundreds of available fellowships, and it is important to review eligibility and criteria to see if you may qualify. Be prepared to highlight your experience. Oftentimes, universities will have a fellowship office that students can reach out to for assistance in finding and applying to fellowships and searching fellowships. So they may have, for example, the University of New Hampshire does have an office of national fellowships, and you can go to that website and there's different search criteria, and it will produce an entire list of fellowships available, and you can click into those and read through what is that fellowship.
Yes. And sorry, Sarah, do you want to finish your thought?
No, I was actually just going to go back. If you go back just to kind of, it does say on that slide.
Oh, it's going the other direction. Yeah.
There we go. So I know I was just talking a lot about fellowships, but really, what is a fellowship? It is a type of individual student merit-based award that supports a student's advanced study, research, or professional development. So fellowships provide financial support and often include tuition support, a stipend, or both. So to obtain a fellowship, you really do have to do your research. Some universities will offer university-based fellowships, but a lot of fellowships are external to that university. So fellowships are competitive and do typically require a formal application process. So as I said, visit your university webpage, review if they have any available fellowships, resources, requirements, and use all the support that is provided to you.
And moving on, so there are many common fellowships among universities, and I'll be talking about the undergraduate ones. So we have the Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship, also known as SURF, and SURF provides basically summer stipends for full-time research. Some examples of university that have the SURF fellowship include University of New Hampshire, Stanford University, Harvard, Boston University, Carnegie Mellon, etc. So international students are typically eligible for SURF. There's secondly the external fellowship or international research. So this fellowship provides funding for students to go abroad and to do research for a certain period. And the University of New Hampshire has its own International Research Opportunities Program, also known as IROP, that supports 9 weeks of summer research abroad. And the average award has been around 6,300 US dollars.
Awesome. And so these are just some examples of other scholarships. I'm not going to dive too deep because I know we're running a little low on time and we do want to leave time for you to answer questions. But just to provide you with a few examples, there are hundreds of fellowships out there, and these are some of just maybe the larger ones. There's the Fulbright International Fellowship. Google offers a fellowship. There's the Rotary Peace Fellowship. And then just to give you an example, kind of on the more local basis, there is the New Hampshire Sea Grant Graduate Research Fellowship. So there really are fellowships at all levels. And just most importantly, it's important to do your research and look into what those fellowship requirements are.
So next, we'll be talking about the last category, the awards, emergency grants, and miscellaneous items. So there are many ways students can win some extra funds at a university, and this is after you become a student. So after admissions, when you're a student. So if you first is the Academic Achievement Award. So if you maintain a certain GPA, you can continue receiving merit-based scholarship semester after semester. Next, we have the Department Honors and Research Award. So this is award for students who've conducted excellent research, and it can be a formal presentation. I know that University of New Hampshire, we do an undergraduate research conference where students who have conducted fantastic presentation have chances to win student awards that provide a couple $100 of tuition off. We have the research presentation awards, which is support for travel and registration to present at different academic conferences. There are also university sponsored business competitions. So basically, giving a pitch, and then if you are part of the winning group, then you receive funding. I know University of New Hampshire has hallway competition that provides around 15 to 35,000 for winning teams. And we have the emergency grants. So these are basically short-term financial aid for students who are facing short-term hardships. And it can be example like if during COVID-19, when student workers were being paid despite having not despite maybe perhaps not working the hours that they would have typically.
And these are some examples of other awards or emergency grants or miscellaneous competitions that might provide you with funding or just a straight up award. And this is after you enroll. So there's graduate research and creativity. So this can be a monetary award given to students for participating in university competitions or conferences. So for example, at the University of New Hampshire, there is what's called the 3MT or the 3-minute thesis. I know that this is a competition widely across many universities. There's also the Graduate Research Conference, where students present across all different areas of program their specific research, whether that be a presentation or a poster presentation. There are travel grants, which is funding for students maybe presenting research or attending professional development. Whether that be just traveling in the US, maybe just domestically or internationally. Some programs and universities have thesis or dissertation awards. So this can be awarded in completion of a graduate program or an excellence award. So recognizing your hard work and qualifications. And then again, on the graduate side as well, there can be emergency or short-term assistance or hardship grants, as Abrita explained.
And lastly, we're going to work ourselves to the end, which is the work opportunities for international students. So we have basically three options. So you have the OPT, or the optional practical training, and this is where students can receive 12 months of work authorization post studies. And if you are studying in a STEM designated program degree, then you may be eligible to apply for additional 2 years. So 3 years in total. We have the CPT, which is the internships or work experience that is part of your academic program and supports a job, job offer or school approval. We have the campus job, so you can work, up to 20 hours per week during semester and 40 hours during off season. And you can find that this is typically where students can find work in the dining hall, the mailing room. It can be driving if you have a valid license. You can be a student advisor. You can work with different offices around campus, such as the Office of International Students and Scholars, as well as the admissions office. And you must have an F1 visa status and then receive authorization from university's international office. Sarah, do you have anything additional to add?
No, that sounds great. Thank you, Abrita.
Yeah, thank you. And finally, we are getting to the Q&A. Thank you so much, guys. And we can start taking the questions now.
I do see some questions that have come through here, and I'm just going to answer them verbally instead of typing, but I do see some people using the Q&A. That's great. Thank you for using the Q&A to ask questions. So I do see some questions about, any fully funded scholarships, specifically in education or psychology. So in terms of fully funded scholarships in education or psychology, it really depends on if you're interested in undergraduate or graduate. So Abrita can kind of speak to that undergrad side. I can speak to the graduate side. But so for the graduate side, for a fully funded scholarship, whether that be at the University of New Hampshire or at any university, it really varies, and you must reach out to that program specifically. So you have to get in contact with the education program or the psychology program. As I mentioned earlier, research programs are often do provide maybe more assistantships than professional programs. But still, professional programs do provide assistantships, and department pages will have information on that. So really important to reach out. I can't necessarily answer if there are any specific ones because it varies by program and it does change. And that information isn't always, broadly displayed on a program website. It is encouraged for students to reach out and ask about the process and what's available. I do see what do full ride scholarships typically cover. So typically that's going to cover, your tuition, your housing, anything that's associated with university costs. So even meals if you're using the school meal plan. So that's what a full ride scholarship would cover. Anything beyond that that's maybe outside of university costs, like if you want to go but buy some food at the grocery store, maybe they'll give you a meal stipend. It really can vary. Abrita might be able to speak a little bit better to that on the undergrad side, a full ride scholarship.
So a full ride scholarship isn't essentially, let me tell you. So if we have the merit-based scholarship where you can receive up to 20,000, and then we have the ISS International Engagement Service Scholarship where you can receive up to 30,000, but it's like typically when you get a high merit-based scholarship, and then you can cap out, if you're a stellar student, if you're excellent and you demonstrate like financial need, and if you are also very like an active like leader, then you can receive you have the potential to receive the full tuition, but not necessarily the full ride, because that the full ride covers a larger like a scope. It would be like housing, the meal plan, sort of like the cost of attendance. It covers the cost of attendance, whereas the scholarships at UNH specifically covers more of the full tuition, can cover up to the full tuition if you're a good student. Also, there was a question which I answered, but I did want to mention for undergraduate, if you're taking the SAT and you have a verbal score of 500 and above, then that is sufficient for the English language proficiency proof.
All right, thank you. With that, I believe we reached the end of the time of the session. Any final thoughts, Sarah, Abrita?
No, that is all. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Nor, for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I did want to mention that if you're more curious to learn about University of New Hampshire, feel free to email us. I'm gonna leave our email down in the comment section. I know our Q&A was short. So if you have any more further questions, I would be happy to answer them. So I'm gonna put my email. Oops, wait 1 second. That is supposed to be a dot instead of a comma.
Once it gives you some real capital to follow his instance.
Okay, there we go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brita. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.